Hi everyone. I just want to talk through assignment number 2 for EDF5620, the Educational Change Case Study Report, the stage 2, and talk through a few aspects of it with you just to hopefully give you a bit more clarity and answer some of the questions that you might be having. So we'll look at the rubric here, and the very first part, part 1, is something that you're very familiar with. So that's just about the participation in the discussion forums. So the difference, whereas in the first assignment, you were simply graded on the first 4 forums, is the fact that you have choice in the second assignment. So between weeks 5 and weeks 11, you have been asked to participate in at least 4 forums. So we're only grading you on 4 of those 7 possible forums. So for what we would like you to do for this then is for you to choose which of the forums that you would like to be graded on. So the way to do that is to go into Moodle, into the discussion forums, and what you'll provide us is a copy and pasting of the forums that you would like to be assessed on. So you'll copy and paste both your original posting as well as your response to at least one person during that week. So simply copy and paste, put into a Word document, put the week for each one that's on there, in case we do want to look back and see what the conversation was like. But really just you choose 4 of the forums between weeks 5 and weeks 11 and put them together for us to grade for you for the second assignment. So that's the first part. All right, so now, as you know, the report that you're presenting to us in this assignment really builds on the one you did for assignment 1. So you are taking the same issue, you're taking the same context, which you thoroughly explored in assignment 1, and now you're telling us, okay, now that I understand the context, now that I understand the issue, this is where I think we can go with it in terms of a change reform strategy. And so the first part just asks you to revisit that, the context and the issue. So it's really taking your first assignment and kind of distilling it. What's the important things for us to know? So you'll give a brief, concise summary of the issue. You'll remind us of why it's important. You'll remind us of some of the important aspects of the context. You might fill in some gaps that were left in assignment 1, maybe something that your marker pointed out to you that wasn't quite clear. So it's a chance to make it really clear and really prepare the reader, your marker, for moving into thinking about the strategy that you're designing. So it's just, though, a summary of what you've already thought through. So that's the first part. The second part is when we start to get into some of the new things and building on some of the work and thinking that you've been doing on the second and third parts of the unit. So the second module was on inner leadership, and that's what this second section deals with. So in this section, you are focusing on yourself as a leader. So for some of you, that's going to be really simple. You are simply thinking about the role that you actually inhabit in an organization where you actually work. So that's easy for you to identify what your role is. For others, you're going to have to imagine. So you're thinking about the issue and the context, so the case that you've already presented us with, and you're going to think through and choose a role for yourself as a leader. So think through the person that could make quite a bit of difference in your case. So is it the principal? Is it a team leader of teachers? Is it a policymaker? Who is it that's going to make the most difference in a realistic sort of manner? So choose that role and make sure that you explain what the role is, discuss that role, and then discuss who you are within that role. So what is your identity? What is your leadership style? How do you inhabit that role? How is the role different because you're in it as opposed to somebody else. And what you'll do is you'll use the readings from the inner leadership section to help you think about yourself in this role. So you might go back to some of the work on diversity. You might go back to some things um, on emotional intelligence. You might go back to some of the readings on relational leadership. So one of those readings helps you understand yourself, both the strengths that you might bring to that role and that identity, as well as perhaps some of the challenges or some of the barriers that could get put up because of your identity within that role. So use the readings to ground your discussion about who you are in this role, who you are as a leader. Some of that will be very real, and some of it will be you imagining a role for yourself. The third part, the section 3 here, is where you move into what will you do. So, okay, you know the case, you know the context, you know the issue, you know who you are as a reader, or sorry, as a leader. But what can you actually do to make a difference about this issue? And for this, we go to the readings on section 3, module 3 of the unit on strategic leadership. So my suggestion to you is to sort of break this section up into 3 parts. We don't need a really detailed, completely considered plan of what you're going to do, but we do want you to use those readings to think through some possible ways forward with this issue. So my suggestion is you break it into 3 parts. So first of all, look at the design, which was our first part of the readings for strategic leadership. Think about the design and use the readings on strategic design to think through your actual issue and context. So how do you go about designing a strategy for change in your case? Who do you involve? How do you balance short-term goals with long-term goals? Think about some practical elements, but using the readings on strategy about design. And then I would say go to implementation. Okay, and again, use the readings on implementation. And think about sort of what would your first steps be? Are there stages to implementation? Who is involved in the implementation and when? And when do you imagine that you might encounter the most challenge? Or when do you think that things will go quite smoothly? So what could you think about in terms of the readings on implementation in your actual case and context? And then I would say move to sustainability. So again, go back to those readings on sustainability and think about, in your case, in your context, what is actually needed to make this reform stick? What is there to make it sustainable? So are there professional learning that you might need to incorporate? Professional learning communities? Is there ways that you can work with the people who are implementing that change in order to make it be a long-term difference, a long-term change? So what can you learn from the sustainability readings that apply to your case? So that's section 3. So it's a general sort of plan, but it shows us that you have thought about these readings and you've made connections to your own case and context. The last section, section 4 here, is just a personal reflection. So you've taken this course, you've done these readings, this unit. What have you learned? How are you as a leader, as a student, how are you different as a result of your learning? What are you actually taking from this? What are you taking for yourself if you were in a current role as a leader, or what are you taking in terms of thinking about your future self as a leader? It's a very personal, write it in I, connect it to you, your own personal reflection on this. So that gives you a general sense of what we're asking. It really is leading on from assignment 1. So do go back, look at the feedback from assignment 1, see what you can learn from that, see what you need to incorporate to really make this assignment a stronger one and to lead and continue your thinking about leadership and strategic design and change strategies. And also, if you have any questions, post them on Moodle. I'm happy to answer those. And do look at those questions too, because I think if you have them, other people have them. So there are often common questions that get put there. All right, all the best. You've got, at this point, about 3 weeks to be working on the assignment. It's due on May 30th. So now is a great time to really get just thinking about it, putting down some thoughts, and start making a structure for yourself. So I wish you all the best.